The first yellow bike helmet appeared over the ridge of my north pasture just as I was fixing the fence line. A woman in bright pink spandex was pedaling hard, cutting right through the middle of my 30 head of grazing Angus. The cattle scattered, lowing in confusion. I dropped my fence pliers and started walking, the dry Kansas dirt crunching under my boots. By the time I reached her, she'd stopped, one foot on the ground, taking a selfie with my cows in the background. "Ma'am," I said, my voice level. "You're on private property." She didn't even look at me, just checked her photo. "It's a bike path. The WA just finished it. Connects the new subdivision to the state park." She finally glanced up, her eyes scanning my worn jeans and dusty shirt. "You the hired hand. You need to move these. They're a hazard." I took a slow breath. "I'm not the hired hand. This is my land. There's no bike path here." She let out a short, sharp laugh. "Oh, there is. WA meeting was last month. Unanimous vote. The Jensen parcel was designated for community recreational use." She pointed a finger toward the sleek, new subdivision a mile east. "We own an easement now. You need to contain your livestock." My heart started a slow, heavy thump. The Jensen parcel. My family's land. There's no easement. You don't have any right here. "Tell it to the board, cowboy," she said, smirking. Her name, I'd learn later, was Beverly. She pushed off, spraying a little gravel from her tire. "And get these cows off the path. Next time I'll call animal control." I watched her bike away, a hot knot of anger tightening in my chest. I pulled out my phone, my fingers clumsy. No service out here. I started the long walk back to the farmhouse, past the old oak where my grandfather proposed to my grandma. The house was dark, quiet. Too quiet since Dad passed. The official-looking letter stuck to my front door with tape fluttered in the breeze. It was a final notice from the Rolling Hills Community Association. It cited unauthorized livestock obstruction of community infrastructure, and gave me 48 hours to permanently remove all farm animals from the designated bike corridor. A fine of $500 per day would be levied otherwise. It was signed by Beverly Walsh, WA chair. They'd done it. They'd actually drawn lines on a map right through the heart of my pasture and called it theirs. They'd never even asked. Just voted among themselves in their clubhouse about what to do with Old Man Jensen's unused field. The next morning, the bikes came in a pack. A dozen of them, led by Beverly in a new neon green outfit. I was waiting by the gate. They streamed through, bells ringing, shouting to each other, startling the cattle into a nervous herd against the far fence. "Morning," Beverly called out, not stopping. "You can't do this." I shouted back. She braked, turning her bike around. The others slowed, watching. "We are doing it." The notice was clear. "You're in violation. This is active agricultural land," I said, struggling to keep my voice calm. "That path is a dirt track my dad used for his tractor. You paved it without my permission. That's trespass. That's destruction of property." Beverly's smile was all chilly politeness. "The community development plan supersedes outdated personal use. Your cows are a nuisance and a safety issue. If you don't remove them, we will." One of the men behind her, a guy in mirrored sunglasses, spoke up. "Just sell the parcel to the WA, man. We'll give you a fair price. Then you don't have to worry about any of this. Sell my pasture. The land that had fed our family for 3 generations." I just shook my head, a cold certainty settling over me. They saw a lonely guy in a rundown farmhouse. They saw an obstacle to their scenic bike rides. They didn't see me at all. "You have until 5 p.m. today," Beverly said, her final word. She nodded to the man with the sunglasses. "Or we proceed with enforcement, Hank." Hank. So that was his name. He gave me a little mock salute as the pack of bikes turned and sped off, kicking up dust on my grass. I pulled out my phone. Still no bars. I looked at the old farmhouse, at the locked storm cellar doors at its side. Dad's words echoed in my head. "Some things, son, you only get out when there's no other choice." I had a choice. I could fight City Hall, or rather, WA Hall. Or I could show them exactly what active agricultural land meant. They wanted a safety issue. I'd give them one, but not the way they expected. I walked to the cellar, pulled the heavy chain, and unlocked the doors. The real deed wasn't in the bank box. It was in the old army footlocker down there, right on top. along with a few other things my dad, the retired colonel, had left behind. Things that explained why our unused field had certain features even the county maps didn't show. Beverly and her HOA had just built their nice, smooth bike path right over the top of them. I looked at the deed, then at the dusty metal crate next to the footlocker. A slow smile spread across my face. They'd called my cows a nuisance. Wait until they met the other residents of the Jensen parcel. The heavy cellar doors groaned as I pushed them shut, the Kansas sun blinding for a second. In my hands, the brittle paper of the deed felt like a loaded weapon. The metal crate was back in the dark, but I'd taken something else from the footlocker. My dad's old Marine Corps ring, which I slipped onto my finger, and a single, unlabeled VHS tape. I didn't have a player for it, but I knew what it was. Training footage of the pasture. By 4:45 p.m., they were back. But it wasn't Beverly on a bike. It was a white tow truck with HOA approved, decaled on the side, followed by Beverly's silver SUV. Hank was driving the truck. They pulled right up to my rusted Ford pickup, which was parked in its usual spot, on the gravel turnoff just beside my own driveway. I stepped out onto the porch, silent. Beverly got out, clipboard in hand. Last chance, Mr. Jensen. Remove the livestock from the community path. It's not a community path, I said, my voice quiet. It's a firebreak and a drainage run. And that's my truck on my property. Your property is obstructing community access, she recited, nodding to Hank. This vehicle is illegally parked on the designated easement. Tow it. My jaw tightened. That truck was my dad's. We'd rebuilt the engine together. Hank hopped out, efficient and smirking, and got to work. I didn't move. I just watched as he hooked the chains, lifted the front tires of my Ford off the gravel, and dragged it away. The sound of tearing metal screeched as my bumper caught on the gate post I'd always meant to fix. He didn't stop. He just kept pulling, leaving a scar of dirt and broken taillight plastic behind. Beverly walked up to the porch, satisfied. The fine for the livestock starts at midnight. I suggest you become a team player. She turned to leave. Who sold you the easement? I asked. She paused, glancing back. The county. It was a perfectly legal land use adjustment for community benefit. You didn't buy it from a Jensen, I said, holding up the deed. This says the mineral and subsurface rights were never severed from the surface land. And it has a covenant. Any non-agricultural development on the parcel requires the written consent of the Secretary of the Army. Her smile flickered, just for a second. What are you talking about? I'm talking about you paving over a capped military survey site from 1962, I said, stepping off the porch. The ring felt heavy on my hand. My dad wasn't just a farmer. He was the Corps of Engineers liaison who managed it. That unused field, you like the look of as a designated low-level hazardous materials containment site. Soil's been clean for decades, but the paperwork never expires. You can't dig, you can't build, and you sure as hell can't pave a bike path without federal approval, which you don't have. Her face went pale, then flushed red. You're lying. You're just a farmer trying to scare me. Am I? I pointed to the far end of the pasture, where the new asphalt path dipped into a small culvert. See that metal grate at the bottom of the dip? That's not for drainage. That's a monitoring well cap. You paved right over the access point. The EPA might be very interested in your construction methods. For the first time, doubt cracked her entitlement. She fumbled for her phone. This is absurd. Hank, who was walking back from securing my truck on the tow bed, looked over. Call the sheriff, Beverly demanded, her voice shrill. This man is making threats and spreading lies about hazardous waste. You called the sheriff. I almost laughed. It was perfect. Please, do that. While Hank made the call, I went inside. I came back out with a faded, folded map from the footlocker, the official seal of the Department of Defense faint but visible on the corner. I spread it on the hood of her SUV. There, drawn in precise red ink, was the boundary of our pasture. Superimposed over it was a grid, with coordinates and small, typed notations. One of them sat directly under the new bike path's midway point. Beverly stared at it, her lips moving soundlessly. This could be fake. Anyone could draw this. The sheriff can run the parcel number, I said softly. The county clerk has the same covenant on file. You just never did a real title search, did you? You assumed. The wail of a siren cut the air. A county cruiser came down my long driveway, dust pluming behind it. My heart hammered, but not from fear. From the grim satisfaction of a trap about to spring. Sheriff Miller got out, an older man with a tired face. "Beverly." "Hank," he nodded. Then he looked at me. "Eli. Got a call about a disturbance. He's threatening me." Beverly jumped in, pointing a shaking finger at me. "And he's falsely claiming there's some government waste on our community path to stop us from using it." Sheriff Miller looked at me, one eyebrow raised. "That true, Eli?" I handed him the deed and the DOD map. "No, sir. I'm informing her of the legal restrictions on the land her HOA illegally developed. They paved over a sealed monitoring site. And they towed my truck from my own driveway." The sheriff studied the papers, his expression growing serious. He recognized the seal. He'd been a friend of my dad's. He sighed, a long, weary sound. "Beverly, is there fresh asphalt on the Jensen parcel?" "It's a community path, on an easement," she sputtered. "Did you get Mr. Jensen's signature? Or an Army Corps release?" He interrupted, his voice flat. She was silent. The sheriff handed me back the papers. "Well, this is a civil mess and a possible federal one. You," he said to Hank, "unhook that truck. Now." "But," Hank started. "Now," the sheriff said, in a tone that brooked no argument. Hank scurried to obey. Beverly looked like she'd been slapped. "You're taking his side. He's just one man." Sheriff Miller turned to her. "No, ma'am. I'm following the law, which you should have done before you started pouring concrete." He looked at the map, then at the pasture. "That path is going to have to be torn up. You understand that, right?" Her composure shattered. "That's $100,000 of community funds. You can't be serious." I finally spoke again, turning to go back inside. "Talk to the Secretary of the Army, Beverly. Let me know how it goes." As I reached my porch, I heard her screaming at the sheriff, her voice raw with fury. I didn't look back. The first twist was complete. They knew the land was a prison they'd built their playground on. But they still thought the only dangerous thing here was the paperwork. They had no idea about the crate in the cellar. Or what I'd already released into the pasture just before they arrived. The other residents weren't hazardous waste. They were Dad's other legacy, 3 imported, purebred Spanish fighting bulls he'd kept as a hobby, normally pastured in the far back 40. Gentle as puppies if you knew them. But they hated 2 things, the color red, and the sound of bike bells. And I'd just moved them into the north pasture, right where the bike path turns a blind corner. The sheriff's cruiser was still kicking up dust in my driveway when the first bike bell rang out from the north pasture. It was a cheerful, tinny sound that froze the blood in my veins for a different reason now. Beverly, still arguing with Sheriff Miller, didn't hear it. But Hank did. He'd just finished unhooking my truck and was staring toward the pasture, his face puzzled. "Thought you moved your cows," he said to me. "I did," I said, leaning against my porch post. "Those aren't cows." The pack of evening bikers, a different group, oblivious, came around the bend, their colorful jerseys bright against the green. And then, the world slowed down. From the stand of old oaks where they'd been calmly grazing, 3 massive, jet-black shapes lifted their heads. The lead bull, El Capitan, swung his great horned head toward the sound. He saw the flicker of red from a rider's jersey. He saw the movement. A deep, rumbling bellow rolled across the field, a sound that vibrated in your chest. It wasn't the gentle lowing of my Angus. It was a challenge. "What in God's name?" Sheriff Miller whispered, his hand going to his sidearm. The bikers saw them. The cheerful shouts turned to sharp cries. Bikes skidded, tipping over on the smooth asphalt. El Capitan lowered his head, pawed the ground once, and then charged. Not at the people, but at the movement, at the color, at the invasion of his new space. The other 2 bulls followed, a thundering wave of muscle and rage. Chaos. Pure, screaming chaos. Beverly shrieked, "Do something." Sheriff Miller was already on his radio, calling for backup, his voice urgent. Live livestock incident, aggressive bulls, civilians on foot. But I was moving. I walked to the old feed drum by the barn and grabbed the long metal rod leaning against it. I climbed the fence into the pasture, the sheriff yelling after me. "Eli, get back here." I ignored him. I walked calmly toward the chaos, toward the bulls who knew my smell, my voice. I raised the rod and brought it down hard on the metal fence post beside me. Clang, clang, clang. The sharp, metallic shock cut through the air. El Capitan slid to a stop 10 feet from a cowering biker, his head swinging toward me. I kept walking, hitting the post rhythmically. Capitan. Aquí. I commanded, my voice firm, using the old Spanish commands my dad taught me. The bull blew out a hot breath, his sides heaving. He took a step toward me, then another. The other two, seeing him stand down, also slowed, their charge broken. I stood between the bulls and the terrified, scattered bikers. Everyone, I said, not raising my voice. Walk. Don't run. To the sheriff at the fence. Now. They didn't need telling twice. They scrambled, abandoning their expensive bikes. Stumbling toward the gate where a stunned Beverly and a relieved Sheriff Miller helped them over. I kept my eyes on El Capitan, slowly reaching into my pocket. I pulled out a handful of the grain pellets I kept there. I held out my flat palm. The great beast sniffed, then gently took the offering, his dark eye watching me. The danger was over. For now. Back at the fence, it was a different kind of storm. Ambulances and another sheriff's car had arrived. The bikers were shaken, muddy, but unharmed. Their bikes lay bent and broken on the path. Beverly was hysterical, pointing at me as the sheriff tried to calm her. He did this. He set those monsters loose. Arrest him. This is attempted murder. Sheriff Miller waited for her to run out of breath. Then he looked at the DOD map in his hand, at the bulls now calmly following me back to the Oak Grove, and finally at Beverly. Ma'am, he said, his voice carrying the full weight of his office. You built an unpermitted recreational path on a federally restricted land parcel without the owner's consent. You then encouraged civilians onto that land, which contained livestock you were explicitly warned about. Mr. Jensen just saved a dozen people from serious injury or worse. He paused, letting it sink in. You're not pressing charges. You are receiving them. Criminal trespass. Destruction of property. Reckless endangerment. And I'm fairly sure the Army Corps of Engineers is going to have a few things to say. The fight left her all at once. She sagged against her SUV, looking at the scene. The crying bikers, the twisted bikes on the path that was now a crime scene, the looming bulls, and me, walking back, covered in dust but standing straight. I stopped in front of her. The crowd had gone quiet, everyone listening. You wanted a community path, I said, my voice quiet but clear in the evening air. You thought this land was just something in your view. Something you could take and make pretty. I looked past her, at the new houses with their perfect lawns. My father fought for this country. He came home and bought this dirt with his blood and pension. He taught me that land isn't just what you see. It's what you respect. It's memory. It's legacy. It's not yours. I turned to Sheriff Miller. I'll give my full statement. The tape in my cellar has the original land survey and the corpse restrictions. It's all there. The final twist wasn't a hidden document or a secret bull. It was the look on everyone's face, the bikers, the deputies, even Hank, as they realized the quiet farmer wasn't a victim or a nuisance. He was the guardian of a truth they'd been too arrogant to see. The law, the land, and the legacy were always on his side. Beverly was led to a patrol car, not in cuffs, but in a daze of utter defeat. As they drove her away, I looked at my pasture. The asphalt path would be torn up. The fines would be paid, by the law. My truck would be fixed. That night, I sat on the porch as the sun set, painting the field in gold. El Capitan grazed peacefully by the fence. The deed in my father's ring sat on the table beside me. The silence was no longer empty. It was full. It was mine.